Hi, everybody. Welcome to this live talk on the topic of privacy. On the occasion of International Privacy Day, today I'm bringing a really special guest who's going to share with you how you can use new methodologies to build a completely new approach to ensure compliance and privacy. As I'm about to bring the guest in, I would like to welcome you all to this live talk show and also to briefly introduce myself. If you don't know me, I'm Tessa Manuelo, founder and CEO of Legal Creatives, and I love to do those lives to be able to talk about how to think more creatively about the law. So if you think this live is going to be useful to a friend or a colleague, all you need to do is tag them right below or share this video with them so they can actually get to attend the live or watch the replay. On this occasion of International Privacy Day, we want to discuss how we can use legal design as an innovative methodologies to modernize the way we practice and we ensure privacy and compliance online. We all know that privacy is becoming so important, especially in this digital age. Technologies is being used to track our movements, monitor our activities, and as users, we are more mindful than ever before as to how data in information is being used online. And so today, with my guest, you're going to learn a completely new way to do this. My guest is in the UK. He is the head of legal privacy at dotdigital. His name is Joseph Stoker, and he's going to be with us in just a moment. So make sure to stay and to tell your friends for this really special show that is starting right now.
Intelligence will came from
Hi, Joseph. It's so great to see you today. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Tessa. It was great to see you, and thank you so much for inviting me along.
So to get things started, maybe you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Joseph.
Yeah,
what
sure.
do you do exactly?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been working in-house at technology companies for over 10 years now, and I've been at dotdigital for the last 5. So we are sort of a multi-channel software as a service platform for marketing teams to send out communications to their contacts. And yeah, over the last 5 years, it started solely in legal, and then over the years I've just gradually picked up the other bits of my job title, sort of spreading into privacy and more so into compliance over the last couple of years as well.
That's so great. Thank you so much for being here and for accepting to share with the audience a little bit about what you do and how you got to change the way you practice or ensure privacy. That's what we want to talk about. I see we have someone live. I don't know what it is, but what I like is this is a live comment, and this is an opportunity for everybody to actually put a live comment, say hi wherever you are in the world, and ask your questions to Joseph. Joseph, I think you got to, let's start this conversation by starting with the legal design methodology and framework which you got to discover. How did you get to discover it, and what is it according to you?
Yeah, so I mean, throughout my career and what I've tried to do, I mean, particularly when I moved to dotdigital as sole counsel, I've always tried to make sure that legal was always something that wasn't siloed, something that was always quite accessible, and trying to deliver, a quality legal service to the business. And I do think that a lot of either sole counsels or lean in-house legal teams are kind of always seem kind of busy working instead of being able to kind of look at how they're working. And it's very, very easy to kind of want to show and demonstrate value by firefighting. And it's a very, very easy trap to fall into, and it's definitely a trap that I fell into for sure. And then with COVID and with lockdown, at the beginning, I tried to give myself some hobbies and things to do, and then first time around that didn't work. And then a couple of years ago, I there were a couple of things that built up, and I had a realization that they were just with work and what I was doing. There was just so much manual processes and so many kind of just firefighting around, just the, not just legal, but kind of with privacy and compliance pieces as well. And kind of had a realization that just something needed to change. So I started doing some research, and I stumbled onto Stefania Pacera's content, and also World Commerce and Contracting, but kind of started reading her dissertation, sort of Beyond the Wall of Contract Text, which really kind of lit a bit of a fire for me, and it kind of sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole. So I'd always, years ago, I'd always enjoyed sort of graphic design, so the ideas of visual contracts sort of really appealed to me. So I just wanted to learn more, and then I stumbled onto Legal Creatives last summer, I think. Started doing some of the courses and the content in there, and then it just made sense for me to move on to the certification, sort of dive in that way and get my hands dirty, learn a bit more, and just educate myself that way. And since then, it's just completely changed my mindset and approach to what I've been doing across the board.
And so, talking about change of mindset and change of methodology, what has changed? I'd love to know more. We want to know more. What has changed from the before and after? Is it about the processes? Is it about the trainings? How did you start making those changes? What was the response as well? So there's a lot of questions. So let's start about, what did you start changing? How was the response? And a little bit about what you do now.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning, I'll be honest. I mean, there were kind of two feelings. I mean, there was almost a little bit of imposter syndrome at the beginning, in terms of, okay, I've learned this stuff. How do I go and do it? But coupled with that, there was just this desire to try and tackle everything at once. So it took me a little bit of time to figure out that wasn't the right approach, and just kind of small incremental changes were the way to go. And the way I look at those kind of three buckets of what I'm doing in terms of legal, privacy, and compliance, there's a front end in terms of how our clients and how my colleagues interact with us as a function, but also there's a back end. And I think it was a case of identifying, okay, what are the quick wins and where will we see the best results. So we've done a lot of back end work over the last couple of months in terms of just improving things like an intake process and just improving the efficiency of systems and processes, but also just engaging the business. We've always been, I've always been quite open and sort of built those relationships. So we're approachable as a function, and people raise things, and we have those conversations, and we can lean into those different departments. But I think approaching different people around the business in a very different way to what they're used to, and actually having a conversation about how can we do this better, just changes that dynamic. And it's been a lot of open dialogue, which has just been great. It's been amazing.
And I'm curious to know, in the beginning, when you started to change your approach, what were some of the challenges you had to overcome? And even starting with learning about this new methodology that is a completely different way to approach the law and how we work, how we collaborate, how we co-create. Maybe you want to share a little bit also about some of the challenges that you had to overcome, Joseph, and how did you manage to overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I touched on one. I think there was a real urge to just try and do everything at once, which, the desire's there, but in practice, it doesn't work. Like there's not enough time in the day to get everything done. So in terms of, I guess, dealing with that, it was very much, okay, where are those quick wins? What can we do to kind of start those conversations, but also kind of get people around the business slowly used to having that dialogue with us as well. So I mean, at the moment, it's very much one-to-one conversations, just as we're kind of rolling out a project and sort of building things out and iterating and ideating things. It's very much just kind of getting that individual feedback, which is far better than, I mean, originally I sort of blasted out maybe 3 or 4 online surveys to try and get feedback, and that just overwhelmed people. People didn't particularly engage with it, but those one-to-one conversations have been the one, or been the route in terms of getting qualitative data that has been much more rewarding, and actually getting genuinely good feedback around how things can be.
So I understand that the challenge is we have to do so much with so little time. And so the answer was, let's use legal design as an innovative methodology to be able to achieve that, right? And in this process of implementing the methodology, which is all about understanding the user and your customers, you use the feedback forms, but you realize people were a little not so engaged. So then you initiated one-on-one conversations, right? And what did you discover during those conversations? I think it would be really insightful to know a little bit what you've discovered.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been, what's been really interesting to see actually is how genuinely interested people are in having these conversations, which is something that I wasn't expecting. I thought it would be a real challenge to get people opening up and talking about how they view it, and actually kind of having an honest conversation about, okay, is this working for you? Is this something that works and that you can engage with and is appropriate and accessible? You know, and I there was a real hesitation at the beginning, because, and I think it kind of touches on that imposter syndrome piece that I mentioned at the beginning. It's, are people going to respond? You know, am I going to get that feedback that I need? Because, you know, there's one side of the coin where implementing this stuff benefits a small legal function because it drives efficiencies in your department and it just makes that flow easier. So there is almost a selfish part to it, but the biggest part of it is making sure that you're delivering that quality of service to people in a way that they want. And I think that's been, in the conversations that I've had over the last 2, 3, 4 months, just the openness of people and the willingness to actually have a conversation was a surprise, and a good one. You know, it was, people are, non-legal people around the business are happy to have this conversation, which is a good thing.
This is great. And thank you so much for sharing so openly about your journey. And so what happened next? So you got this feedback. What did you do with the feedback? How did you got to incorporate it? And what did you start changing? Do you have some specific examples that you want to share, Joseph?
Yeah, so there's been a couple of projects kind of on the go in tandem, one bigger than the others. So the focus has been on, you know, the smaller projects have been sort of almost information design, so pieces of education and infographics. So we did one, for example, on sustainability, and, you know, over the last 18 months at dotdigital, we've really made a push for sustainability, which has been awesome because it wasn't something that was driven by the compliance function. It was something that came from a group of people around the business who really wanted to drive that change and that positive change. And it was very much a case of, at the beginning, it was, okay, how can we support the more, I suppose, legal elements of it and the compliance pieces? But, you know, we've been able to help with, you know, in tandem with a kind of change in our supply chain process and communicating that to the business. We paired that with sustainability and, you know, added infographics in that training to educate. And, you know, it's still relied on and it's still part of our process. And I think we even refer to it in our certification and audit process now, which is great. And similarly, in terms of information design, you know, with Privacy Day today, there were some infographics that were sent out around just key nuggets of information, kind of key takeaways, and just getting people to think about this stuff. So there's been little projects around that. But one of the bigger projects that we've been working on is just improving the way that the business can engage with us as a function. And it is something that's very reliant on technology and legal tech to do that, to cover our needs. But there's been a lot of conversation around how the business can interact, and what it should look like. So meeting legal needs and getting the information that we need on an intake or managing a supply contract, but also getting that continuous feedback of how does this look, how does it work, does this make sense to you, are you able to read this, understand it, and get the information together. So it's almost from a system design perspective, just chipping away and getting feedback at that as well. That's been our bigger project, and we've been working on that for about 5 months or so, and we're just about to launch it as well in the next week or so, which would be good.
This is great. Did you collect any feedback in this process, and what was the response that you received from the people who got to be involved in this project, whether it's your colleagues, your teammates, or the users of this new approach?
Yeah, so we were kind of lucky, really, that the real driving need for us at that point in time was supplier contract management. That was a real need, and this tool is broader than that. There's a lot more that we can do with it, but it lended itself quite well to just focusing on a small group of employees around the business who were responsible for managing supplier relationships, and it was a small part of the platform and a smaller but diverse group around the company. And actually it lended itself really well to beta testing. And as we roll stuff out, we've made tweaks to intakes and the processes from a system and a process perspective, but we've been just gathering ad hoc feedback as we go all the way through the last few months to understand how people are enjoying it, and if it works for them in terms of not just raising a request, but managing things going forward as well as a process, which is all of that information is fed into the other parts that we're looking to roll out to the business as well. But I think it's not something where we're saying it's launched and it's done. It's very much, okay, every 2 or 3 months we're going to be getting continuous feedback from people as we go. It's very much going to be a living thing that we keep looking at and keep adjusting and improving and adding to as well. So not just with features from the technology that we can add and leverage, but critically getting that user feedback, because if you want to drive users to that process, they've got to engage with it, and that's critical to it being successful.
Yes, I love what you really have been able to involve your users in this process. So it ended up being a co-creation more than something that would eventually be, designed or at least thought through in silos. We tend to try to solve problem as experts, a little bit on our own. And I like the way that you got to involve all of your stakeholders, your users, got to ask for the feedback, got to integrate the feedback. And I'm pretty sure that on this journey, some of the tools and materials that you've learned with Lego Creatives must have helped you. And I would be super curious to know what really helped you with this project, whether it's getting started or monitoring the project. What are some of the things that you found in Lego Creatives that really helped you get started and really get to continue to actually be able to have this first project now running?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the overall process and just ingraining that thinking in all of these projects is critical, in terms of that empathy piece at the beginning and actually getting that honest feedback. And I think the one slight challenge, not challenge, but thing that we've had to sort of adapt to is that there is very much a legal need. There is a need from us as a function, and it's coupling that with, okay, where are the pain points for the business, and getting those together. So I think rather than just understanding the user piece, it's getting that understanding from both sides and finding that middle ground to actually then begin defining what the problem is and then working out who's involved and who needs to be involved and moving from there. And I think that creative process after that is, I found it helps, like the importance of the empathy and the definition piece segment of that process makes the ideation and the prototyping and just that ongoing dialogue and testing so much easier. If you can get those ground pieces in and you've ingrained that way of thinking into any project, it just helps massively. And we're going through the exercise now. There's conversations. So we have the new legal tech piece here, but then we have existing privacy tech over here. And when it comes to something like suppliers, there's dual need. And there are suppliers who deal with PII. So we need to look at, okay, there's the contract and the terms, but we need to do the privacy assessment in tandem and get the information that we need from that as well. And one of the conversations and the conversations that are still ongoing is understanding and making that shift to that information gathering piece. The person who is leading that particular processing activity, whatever it might look like, they know the detail, and it's getting that information and making sure that you get that in a way that is efficient for them, but also in a way that they can find accessible and intuitive, and basically bringing that all together. And I think that design thinking process and those steps, if you can ingrain that into any project, then I found anyway that it just works like a dream.
This is so great to hear. You definitely integrated the methodology so well. I see we have Sunashi who says, "Hi, Joseph. This is an opportunity for me to invite the live attendees and also whoever is going to watch this replay to leave a comment, leave a question, especially if you're live, so you can ask your questions to Joseph. Is there anything you would like to learn about his journey towards applying legal design for privacy and compliance? I would be super curious to know if, Joseph, there are any other ways that you apply the methodology. Is there, I think you mentioned as well being able to do more with less, and that is a lot about your own processes as well. Do you want to share a little bit about how the other applications for the methodology that you actually use and the difference it's making for you as well as a legal professional leading this department and all of this work that needs to be done for compliance and privacy online?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, particularly on given it's Privacy Day, I should probably talk more about privacy, right? So privacy as a thing to anybody who isn't involved in that area, just like legal, just like compliance, it's something that people don't necessarily interact with in the same way. I mean, some people are very invested in it in their personal life, but when it comes to work life, it's we have security stuff, it's over there, and they don't necessarily have to deal with it and interact with it. And I mean, the privacy tech piece that I just spoke about is probably a good example. The process at the beginning was very much send us the stuff you have and we'll find out the information from that. And again, it ties to some of the stuff I was talking about at the beginning, that when you're working in-house, you almost the initial thing is to try and show value, and it descends into firefighting really, really quickly. And when you take a step back, really the person raising it knows more than you do, and it would be quicker and more efficient for them to provide you with that information. But equally, it drives a behavior change. and that's the shift that we're trying to make. So rather than just being forwarded their supplier's privacy policy and security information, to try and unpick where's the data coming from, what are we doing with it, where's it going to go. If you present those questions to the person in the business who's making the ask, it drives a behavior where they might not naturally think about this stuff, but it drives that behavior towards them thinking about the privacy related elements you need them to. And then from there it sets a really good foundation for education and interest to build out. So that's the route that we're exploring at the moment, and that's the conversations that we're starting to have. And it seems positive. It seems that people want to help, people realize that they're closer to it, and can engage with it more, and it becomes more of a collaborative exercise, which again is only a good thing in terms of if we look at that big picture piece of a sole counsel or a very lean in-house function, you have to lean on other teams and other departments. You have to, just in the same way that they lean on you and ask a legal question. There's plenty of times that you need to lean on them. And I think anything you can do to speed up the process for the benefit of delivering legal services or privacy services to the business just helps set a good foundation, and it helps you as a function because you can spend your time doing good stuff, and that's where we're trying to drive to.
This is so interesting. Thanks so much for sharing about your experiments, which turned out to be really good. I like the fact that you say that you need to rely on them and eventually that they realize that they can be involved in this. And this is really a powerful thing because it's, at least how I understand it, it's all related to empowering your team or people who are not necessarily in your team, but in your organization to actually be involved and to participate and to co-create. And we don't always need to have the answer. And at times as experts, we think we do, but the best way to provide the best solution is to involve your users so they adopt the solution, right? And they co-create with you.
Absolutely. And I think one of the great things that helps at where I am now at dotdigital is that all the way through pre-GDPR and since, there's various people around the business who are very close to whether that be product development or engineers in the background who have an interest and are aware and have a incredible working knowledge of privacy and know its importance in terms of what they're building, what they're doing. And if you're lucky enough to already have those people who are champions of privacy around the business, it just makes things so much easier because you're not having to, it just breaks down those barriers, and it's less of a battle to try and demonstrate the importance of privacy to the business when so many people are already engaged. So I think that's critical as well.
I have a question for you, Joseph. What if you, I have two questions for you. What if you had known about this methodology before? Would you have done things differently?
Yeah. 100%.
And how?
100%. I think if I go back to, so I think about that when I first started here, right? And I think about that first day, that first week, and the plan for the first month, and the plan for the first 3 months, and the plan for the year. I know I've said it already, and I'm repeating myself, but it's falling into that trap of demonstrating value by putting out the fires or just responding and not thinking about the how. Thinking, you're so busy working and not thinking about the how. And I think once that question of how then immediately leads to the principles of design thinking, how to go about it. And I am, I will preach this until I'm blue in the face. I think, having a legal design thinking mindset in any in-house function, but particularly for small legal functions, lean legal functions, or sole counsels, just changes everything. If you can get that to underpin what you're trying to do for the business, because everyone wants to provide a great service to the business in a legal function or a privacy function or compliance. That's everybody's cut from that cloth, right? But it's about the how do you do that? And whether you think about all the various hats that in-house counsel and even GCs have to wear, legal, privacy, compliance, think about legal ops, legal tech, everything like that, all of those different kind of facets of the job. If you apply that design thinking at the beginning, it immediately answers the how, and it just and like I said, it doesn't just engage people around the business and engage all users. It helps you day to day. It makes things more efficient, because the function and the lawyer is a user as well, and it's important that it is making a difference to service delivery, right? So that's what that's probably the question I would have asked myself first, is how do I do this? How do I do it better?
And now that we have covered the how and also the why, if you had a piece of advice to give to the audience, we have a large audience of legal professionals who are curious about this methodology. Some of them are already using it, applying it. It's not always easy. So if you had a piece of advice to give to the audience, what would it be? Some kind of wisdom that you have acquired from this experience?
I think I said to you before the call, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm one to dispense wisdom, but I think just, for me, it's, if I look back, particularly over the last 6 months or so, it's perseverance with it. I'd say, if I could put it into one word, I think, because originally I didn't doubt the methodology or the way of working. It was more, will it work? Will I be able to get people engaged? Because it's, if you're the one voice talking about it in this way, there's naturally a bit of hesitancy, and I've made mistakes with it at the beginning. I had grand ideas and grand plans of just trying to do everything at once. But I think perseverance and just starting small, like just find those quick wins that just make a little bit of a difference, and start, because if you can get small things in, like those smaller projects that I mentioned, it just changes the way that you work. And for me, just being able to do those small things and seeing the value from something smaller, well, you're learning by doing on the one hand, and you're also wiring yourself to that methodology in a better way.
Starting small, keep going too. This is a lot of wisdom. This is a lot of wisdom.
That's all I've got. That's all I have. That's all the wisdom I have.
This is great. I think it's so important, like the small steps, going from A to B. You don't need to go from A to Z right away. It's actually almost impossible. So breaking it down into smaller chunks, and keep tracking whether or not we get the right feedback, I think is a really smart thing to do. And tell us a little bit, what is your next step, Joseph? And how can we help you?
So yeah, like I said, the bigger project, I know I kind of mentioned this concept of the back end and the front end, and particularly with a topic like privacy, it's more important to focus on the back end first. You need to understand, you need to understand what's going on from a privacy perspective anyway, but in terms of those processes and getting the machinery working in the background is critical. So I think once the plan, or the next plan after we roll out the bigger project, is to start looking at that front end. Not just online terms or contracts or anything like that, but from a privacy and a compliance perspective, it's looking at bedding in and looking at our policies, looking at what we've got. Because if you look from a privacy perspective and a compliance perspective, so many companies have reams of policies that are just, to go back to that, Stefania's dissertation title, just a wall of text, and it doesn't engage people. And I think the slight difference between contracts and policies is that, okay, with a contract, you need people to understand it, but not in the same way as a policy. A policy, there are some key messages that you need people to understand but retain as a behavior. When it comes to, like from a compliance perspective, things like anti-bribery, it's knowing the right thing to do and knowing the wrong thing to do, and it's having those key takeaways. And it's the same with privacy as well. It's what to do in certain situations, and I think that's the next thing that I've earmarked to look at. It's how can that be improved? And again, there is a little bit of focusing on the policies first to almost get the back end, get staff and employees there and get it ready for them. But equally, because that's going to inform the front end. That's a lot of that information and the data that you get from that piece will help in terms of what's public, and what we share with our clients as well. Because they need to see and understand that exactly the same. How do we do X? How does that supplier do X, Y, and Z? And I think looking at the layout of policies is going to be important for us next.
This is so great. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the audience to ask some questions, because we're coming almost to an end with this live talk with Joseph on the occasion of International Privacy Day. So if you have some questions, this is your opportunity. You can leave them right below in the chat, wherever you are watching. We appreciate you. We appreciate you being here. And in the meantime, I'd like to ask Joseph, what is the best way for the audience to connect with you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it email? So
yeah. LinkedIn is fine. I'm on Instagram as well. In-house legal _beagle. So yeah, I mean, I'm always open to connecting with anybody. Just send me a message, questions, anything.
This is great. This is great. So make sure to connect with Joseph if you have some questions. This is your time to ask. What I've really enjoyed about this conversation was the practicality of it. At times, we tend to think that legal design is more complex than what it really is. And I like how you made it simple, for yourself and for your audience, making sure that you just getting some good results as well. But small wins leads to big victories, right?
That's the plan, hopefully.
This is so great. So I can't wait to see what you're going to be doing this year. Do you have some predictions for privacy in 2022? I know that's a tough question.
Oh, that's a really tough question. I mean, I think transparency is going to be so important, more important than it is now. I mean, there's big decisions that have come and are coming in terms of, just a week or so ago, Austria declared Google Analytics illegal, and there's going to be a lot more decisions changing that. So it's going to impact businesses and users. Marketing teams are going to be asking, well, what do we do? I mean, I don't think they've published the full decision yet, to get under the hood of the decision, but there's a lot of stuff out there and big decisions that are going to come. And this, Tessa, privacy is an area that is never going to stop evolving. ever. Like there's not going to be any change in terms of the advances of technology, and just globally, people and countries and governments putting laws in to keep up. So I think transparency is going to be absolutely critical, like regardless of what happens in the data protection landscape, because the transparency piece is fundamental, regardless of what government does what. All people want to know is what's going on. That's a fundamental. And I think, applying design thinking helps that. I mean, it's going to be critical for that in terms of how effective that communication is. I mean, there's some great stuff out there. I mean, I was talking about front end pieces, but we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, Tessa, when we were talking, but the idea of privacy by design, under the GDPR, it's been there for, well, almost 4 years in force, and for a couple of years before that, it was an idea. But if you look around the internet and you look at privacy policies, you don't see much in the way of design in those policies. It's just text, and it buries key information away, and it's not very clear. It doesn't even necessarily do the job it needs to. And I think there's some great resources out there. I mean, the privacy policy that Juro and Stefania put together and open sourced is an amazing resource, just an incredible resource that is just out there for anybody to go and use. And I think it's there's other ways of doing it for sure, but it's a great example of what can be done in terms of transparency.
And I see Marco also has a question. So let's start with Marco's question. Thanks for being here. Marco says, hi, Joseph, good to hear from your experience. Please give us an example of how do you introduce brand, a project or ideas to your in-house colleagues, very practically speaking, let's say.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if I'm understanding it right,
a brand new project. How do you introduce a brand new project? Ideas to your in-house colleagues, very practically. What would you do? What would be the steps you would follow?
I think if you look at the methodology piece, and I remember this when I kind of finished the certification and had all these ideas bubbling away in my head. If you kind of go down the route of empathizing and understanding and defining your users, well, the rest of your team were the first that I spoke to. Even just sounding off, is this a good idea? Because equally it opens up where the pain points are in the team. What particular experiences has the rest of the team had with a particular area? Is there a particular flow of work that isn't working or is draining or needs improving? And I think initially it was very much a case of getting that empathy and understanding just in that box of the legal function. But since then, it's very much a case of guiding and showing others how to do it and how to follow it and seeing the benefits of it as well.
I
hope that answered the question anyway.
Yeah, Melanie says, good question. So basically you would open up for people to talk. This would be the first step. You would do like a meeting, you would do a virtual meeting.
I think because, I mean, it just makes sense to include the in-house function as they are equally a user as much as anybody else. They are as involved in the documents, they are as involved in the policies and the process, just on the other side of the coin, right? And equally it helps get buy-in, because I think from my experience anyway, I've never dictated, so to speak. I've never said, right, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it. It's understanding other people's input and approaches, because it's a great sounding board to have as well. I mean, particularly in a lean function, I mean, you work so closely together, that, purely about work. There's, almost a therapy element to it as well, right? That you're dealing with the same struggles day in, day out. And there are challenges working in a lean function, and it's almost cathartic in a way to kind of approach those challenges and including everybody in that approach of, okay, where are the issues? And going to what I said earlier in terms of initially starting out and trying to apply this thinking to absolutely everything, understanding the priorities. Where do you find those quick wins? Because I have my ideas, but it might not be anything towards a bigger problem I might not necessarily know about.
This is so great. I love it. Love the answer. Thanks, Marco, for asking this question. And I want to add a little comment to this because I think this is really important. You have said, Joseph, let's have a discussion about the pain points. And I think when we realize all of the pain points, because there's often a lot more than we think. So realizing all the pain points and then prioritizing what we want to work on, and having people involved in this process of what if things could be different? What if things could be easier? What if we could do more with less? And have this aspirational perspective that we can do better. It's possible. There are ways to fix this. There's nothing fixed in stone. We can fix this together. And having right from the start this collaborative approach, I believe is really empowering. So I want to thank you for bringing this up, Joseph. It's really great.
No, well,
Any last? No, thank you. Anything else you would like to add before we go? We're about to go now. So is there any last words, anything you would like to share to the audience, Joseph, before we go?
No, I mean, I think, all I would say is that I seriously recommend just underpinning design thinking as at the root of everything that you do. If you look at the how and how you're delivering services, and like I say, particularly for solo councils and lean functions, I think it's critical because it just improves things and can make such a difference so quickly. In terms of all of that firefighting, that it helps reduce. I think it just helps from a not getting into a burnout state. That there's so much, and I think it just underpins everything. And if there is any wisdom to what I say, that's the recommendation I'd have and say. It's just, it makes a big difference.
This is so great. Well, thank you so much, Joseph, for accepting to share today a little bit of your work and also the projects you've been leading using this beautiful methodology that is legal design. I also want to say that you're welcome back anytime you want, Joseph. It would be a pleasure to have you back later this year. I would like to also take this opportunity to thank the audience for being live or for taking the time to watch the replay, and to encourage you all to connect with Joseph. You can find him on LinkedIn, as he has mentioned, the best way to connect with him. You can also find Joseph inside the community hub of Legal Creatives and get to have a conversation around privacy inside the community hub. It's really easy to use the hub. It's a bit like a private Slack. It's not Slack, but it looks a little the same. And you can connect here with Joseph and with other legal designers that are on this journey to apply the methodology and to do things differently. So don't hesitate, take this opportunity. As Melanie says, thank you, Joseph. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Tessa.
Well, and let's continue. This year for Legal Creatives is going to be a year where we want to bring this beautiful community together and showcase the work, the projects, the great stuff that is happening around the world in legal design and innovation. And so we're going to continue those talks every single week. Actually, next week we're going to have two talks. We're going to start with Cecilia Ferrari, which I'm sure you know, Joseph, from the Academy. And she's going to share a little bit the work she's done redesigning a contract using Miro. And so I want to take this opportunity to invite you all as well to attend this live talk next week. I believe it's going to be, when is it going to be? I believe it's going to be on February 1st. February 1st, let's take a look here. Yep, February 1st with Cecilia Ferrari, the Virtual Legal Design Gallery, part 1. We're going to have a part 2, a part 3, and an official gallery in February to talk a little bit about how you can use legal design to your contracts and your legal docs. So make sure to come back for this talk and to follow Joseph and to stay active and engaged, because I think there's a huge potential for privacy and compliance using the design thinking methodology, and we haven't really tapped into what's possible. The theory is there, but the practice is not there yet. So it's a great opportunity for practitioners to be involved, like you, Joseph. Thank you once again for being here, and let's stay in touch.
Thanks, Tessa.